Welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Staltari, and I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. And today we're going to be looking at Les Filles du Roi, a series I began in 2021 to honor one Fille du Roi, which has now turned into 326. And on we go to the objective of 700. So, or however many I uncover. So please let me know in the comments below if there's one that I haven't done. Please have a look at my website, Have Roots Will Travel, and look at the index to see what I've done so far and if I've missed one of yours. So please let me know. The idea behind Les Filles du Roi is really to get to know these women and say their names, because that's kind of what the impetus was. I wanted to know not just the name. My case, it was Boulanger, which was the family name, but Marie Urselle Arculaire was my great grandmother, who was a fille du roi. And I wanted to know her and what she experienced and where she came from and that sort of thing. And I try to do that with every single video that I'm doing. And so far, it's been a tremendous journey of learning about France, learning about new friends, and learning about all the trials and tribulations that these amazing women went through. And before we move on to exploring the new Fille du Roi that we're going to be looking at today, let me show you ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know: subscribe, like, and notify. That helps my, I guess it's called algorithms, something like that. And the next three are ways that you can help the channel grow. We have YouTube memberships. You can click on the link in the notes and find out all about that. It gives you access to things, and it might be something you're interested in. And then we also have the super thanks that is part of YouTube on a particular episode that you like. You may want to give a super thanks. And then we also have on my website, Have Roots Will Travel, there's a PayPal button, and you can click on that and make a donation of whatever you like. You can make it ongoing, or you can do it one time. So whatever is something that you would like. And like I always say, if you like, it's great. If you don't, that's great too. So it doesn't matter. I just appreciate the support no matter how it comes. So thank you ever so much to all of you. And let's get on with the show and find out about our episode 326. Today we're going to be exploring episode 326, Francoise Tierce. She comes to me from a viewer request, and I'm thrilled to be able to present her story. Let's get to know Francoise a little bit better. Francoise was born in 1656 in Paris, France. Her parents were Guillaume Tierce and Catherine Truet. Now, she is born in the 6th arrondissement of Paris, also known as Luxembourg, which is one of the city's most historic and intellectually rich neighborhoods. At its heart stands the Church of Saint-Sulpice that you see on the right hand of your screen. It's a grand Roman Catholic church and the second largest in Paris, just behind Notre Dame. The present building was begun in 1646 atop the ruins of the 13th century church that existed there. And Anne of Austria laid the first stone there in 1646. And it is closely tied to the Society of Saint-Sulpice, founded by Jean-Jacques Ollier. The sixth is home to iconic institutions like the École des Beaux-Arts and the Institut de France. And they have landmarks such as the Pont des Arts, Saint-Germain-Abbé, and the Odeon Theatre of Europe. It's also the stomping ground of famous authors like Jean-Paul Sartre, de Beauvoir, Camus, and is celebrated for that enduring kind of cafe culture and revolutionary ideas. The 6th arrondissement is definitely one of the most expensive and also extraordinary. When you think of Paris, you sort of think of the 6th. And so this is where she would have come to us from. Francoise would have come from this very elegant area of France. Obviously, it wasn't everything back then, but the seeds of the 6th are definitely there, and she would have experienced the true Parisian kind of feeling, if you will. And she comes from here to the New World. Wow. Let's have a look at her journey. After her mother passed away, she would come to New France and she would bring a dowry worth about 200 pounds. And she would arrive on June 30th, 1671, and she arrived on the Prince Maurice. And now the groom that she would select, let's have a look at him. Now his name is really different. I am not, in all of the 300 and some episodes I've done, I've never come across this name. Offray Coulon de Mabira. It's very French. Born in 1640 in a place called La Chapelle-Baton in France, his parents were Jacques Coulon and Marie Biblet. Now, La Chapelle-Baton is a small rural parish in the Saintonge region of France, and it was part of the Diocese of Saintes in the 1600s. It was mostly farmland with a scattered population and a very simple local church that served as a center of religious and community life. This church in this area was linked to the nearby parish of Antezat-la-Chapelle and was likely under the spiritual authority of the Abbey of Saint-Jean d'Angély. Records from this parish would have included baptisms, marriages, and burials for local families, including the one Offray Coulon was born into. So if you're doing some research on this particular gentleman, this is where you would go. So let's see his journey to New France. So Offray would come, as so many did, as a soldier in the Carignan-Salers region. He arrived in New France on the 18th of June, 1665, and he was part of La Compagnie de la Tour. So remember, they would serve their about a year term, or maybe 3 years or so, depending on their conditions. And they would basically choose to stay, and usually were given land or money or both, because they really, really needed those soldiers to stay to establish that colony. So Francoise and Offray were married at Quebec City on October 13th, 1671, about 2.5 months after Francoise would have arrived, which is the usual time period. And she did receive the king's gift of 50 pounds. And they were married at Quebec City. They would settle at Sorel. Sorel is actually the 4th oldest city in Quebec, and it began in 1642 when Charles Montmagny, the first governor of New France, built Fort Richelieu against the Indian threats. That fort was destroyed in 1647 by the natives, but rebuilt by the Carignan-Salers Regiment in 1665. Pierre de Sorel was in command of a region of the Carignan-Salers and would become the first seigneur in 1672. So it makes a lot of sense that that's where they settled. They would go on to have 2 children. Marie-Jacqueline would marry Emery Arpin and would have 6 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Renée would marry Geneviève Vanier and would have 4 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. This is one of the saddest events I've covered. Offray would pass away in 1677 at the age of 37. He and Francoise had been married a mere 6 years at this point. Just absolute. So there she is, alone with 2 children. So the groom that would come along, his name was Pierre Gignardi Delon, and he was born in 1653 in Lavaltrie, France. His parents were Charles Guignard and Jacquette Coindrel. Now remember that La Barre des Monts, you can see the little sign, I was able to find that. La Barre des Monts is actually located in the Vendée region, you can of western France, just across from the island. And so in the Vendée department, where is that? What? And so they were married May 2nd, 1677 at Sorel. And this is the town that they settled in. Beautiful, Lavaltrie. Let's explore it a little bit. To explain Lavaltrie a little bit, I think it's kind of an interesting kind of dynamic. In 1672, Jean Talon, our very famous intendant of New France, gave this land to Lieutenant Séraphin Marjane, Sœur de Lavaltrie. Now in 1699, Pierre-Paul Marjane, the first, inherits the seigneury. Now, he is also a career soldier, and he would fight on the plains of Abraham for the French. Now, in 1766, Pierre-Paul Marjane de Lavaltrie II would ultimately expand the territory to include such townships as Kildare. He would also be elected to the very first Parliament of Lower France in 1792. Now, in 1810, Pierre-Paul's daughter, Suzanne Antoinette, marries Charles Gaspard Thériault de Lanaudière, and who acquires the territory. So the seigneury would now become part of the Lanaudière family. Charlotte Thériault de Lanaudière, one of their three daughters, would marry Barthélemy Joliette, and they would go on to become the founders of the town of Joliette. And that, my friends, is how the soap opera of Quebec works. Don't you just love it? So they would go on to have 6 children. Pierre, their firstborn, would have a natural child with Geneviève Vanier, his half-brother's wife. Don't even get me started. He then would marry Thérèse Betiac and would have 1 child who did survive. Thérèse's mother was a fille du roi, Catherine Lalard, who we profiled in episode 66. Françoise would marry Jean-Baptiste Beaugrand de Champagne, and they would have 5 children, all of whom would make it to adulthood. Jean-Baptiste's mother was a fille du roi, Marguerite Sanson, who we have not yet profiled. Then we have Jean-Baptiste, who married Catherine Guyon and would have 3 children, all of whom would survive. And then he married Charlotte Robitaille, with whom he would have 1 child who did survive. We have Louise, who married Jean-Baptiste Piette, and they would have 1 child who did survive. Marianne would marry Louis Roger, and they would have 2 children, both of whom would make it. And Madeleine would marry Jean Rondeau, and they would have 1 child who did survive. Now, in the 1681 census, we find Pierre and Françoise, and then Marie and Renée from her first marriage. And then we have Pierre and Françoise, that's all who had been born before 1681. They have 1 gun, 1 cow, and 6 arpents volants, about 6 acres of land. This woman cannot catch a break. Pierre would pass away sometime between 1689 and 1702. We don't know. We have no burial record. He and Françoise would have been married, given those dates, between 12 and 25 years. And Pierre would pass away before the age of 50. That we know. Absolutely tragic. So she would marry a 3rd time to a man named Pierre Vigne de Toulouse, born in 1656. He is from Toulouse in France, and his parents were Pierre Vigne and Marie de Fosse. Now, they would marry on the 8th of February, 1703, and they would not have any children. So another husband would pass away, the 3rd one. Pierre would pass away sometime after 1718. Françoise herself would pass away at age probably 70, 68, between the age of 68 or 70, and she would pass away in 1724. And she is buried at Berthier. But I'm sorry, she died at Berthier, but she was buried at Sorel, which is where she really kind of, began her journey, if you will, in New France. And I believe that's where her first husband would have been buried. And so she would leave us 50 descendants, however, as of 1729. What a life she led. What an incredible life Housewives led. 3 marriages, She kept going right until the edge. To live to be 70 at that age, at that time, was extraordinary. So we salute her longevity. We salute her constant trying to keep going. I mean, despite the loss of her first husband, the loss of her second one, she just kept on. And, you know, during times that we have issues, we're like, how am I going to get through this? Well, think about what they had to go through. And sometimes that is what I think about actually when I'm surrounded by issues. I'm like, you know what? They faced a lot harder lives than me. And we salute Francoise for her bravery, for her courage, for her ability to keep on going on no matter what. So we really, really are grateful. And we bless her memory. I also want to say thank you to my patrons, supporters, and subscribers. You all are amazing. So thank you so much for being there for me as I build this channel. I really have appreciated each and every one of you through the years, and you continue to support and give me feedback, and all, positive and negative. I like it all. It doesn't matter. It helps me grow. So thank you so much to all of you, and I will see you on the next episode of Les Filles du Roi. Until then, au revoir.